Hi, I'm Jim. Welcome to the Unbound Performance Podcast, where we explore the world of sports and performance mindset training.
And I'm Caroline. Each week we talk about the strategies, habits, and mental framework that help us to excel. Let's get into today's episode.
All right.
So we'll talk about purpose as it pertains to performance and identity in life and how that impacts everything, frankly.
Yes. I think many people go through life without pausing to reflect on who they want to be, what they're doing, and why.
Yeah, just like daily tasks, check, move on.
Yeah.
With no assessment of the big picture.
Yeah, and then, these are questions that have been asked forever, thousands of years. And I think having a sense of why you're doing something really matters. And when it comes to performance, then it can be a huge mistake to find your worth in a performance
And the
outcome.
outcomes. Yeah.
And
It was like Katie said last week. It's like she's Katie, the volleyball player, not the volleyball player Katie. And it's important to remember that there's bigger things. There's that performance, whether it's a sport or other high pressure situation that requires performance or some assessment in the end. Like that will end at some point, and you have to be good with who you are and what your purpose is beyond that.
absolutely. And so many times I've asked, younger athletes, why are you doing this? And it's always something very finite in the sense, like it's to get a scholarship. But they'll always respond with something like that.
Yeah.
I want
Get a
to
scholarship.
get a scholarship. I want
win a
to
national
play
championship.
Division One.
Yeah.
I want to.
Or they have some sort of statistic per game goal they want to have.
Very often.
Yeah.
And that's usually in service of some
Recognition.
and end game
Yeah.
of some kind. And that's where all of a sudden, then, if you're in a team and your whole identity is wrapped up in your performance, then you can find yourself like secretly hoping whoever's playing in front of you doesn't do as well, and that can turn very ugly very quickly.
Well, on the flip
And
side, too, if you aren't performing to what your expectations are, and that's the only thing that you think you bring to the team, or that's the only thing that's important to you, then if you aren't performing well, then you don't have a role on that team when you aren't scoring points, or you aren't whatever your goal is. And that's when you crumble. And then even further, talking about the team first that we talked about last week with Katie is like, it requires everyone to have a role, whether whether you are excelling in what your typical goal is that day, or you're doing some sort of backup plan because that's not working. But everyone has to be able to contribute, even when primary goal or primary role is not being executed.
that was one of my favorite things I read about Aaron Judge, who plays center field for the Yankees, and it was an article in Sports Illustrated during his rookie year, and he talked about all the different ways he could help his team do well. If he went 0 for 4 that day, then he could maybe make a play in the field. If he didn't get an opportunity to do something like that, he could greet every teammate as they came in to the dugout off the field, or be rooting for them when he's in the dugout, and trying to help set a tone for success.
Yeah.
And
For everyone, not just for himself.
yes, and that's why he's captain of the Yankees now,
Right.
And very highly regarded by his teammates because they all know that he cares about something beyond his own personal statistics and accomplishments and awards.
I think that idea too of if I'm not, hitting home runs and I'll high five my teammates on the way back to the dugout, it's kind of a similar, comparison to that Michael Phelps example of visualizing if his goggles fall off. Like, you don't have to just be prepared for outside things to impact you, but like a situation where you think you're going to perform well and you aren't, you have to be able to know right away what, if 1A is not cutting it, what's 1B? What's the next thing I can do at the flip of a switch during the game to recognize, okay, this is not working. What else can I bring to the table? So I think that's another version of just self-awareness of recognizing that, okay, typically what I do well is this list of items. But if those aren't executing, I need to be able to quickly shift to what else I can contribute.
Well, and I think that that has to become part of who you are.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen casually or by
By
accident. And it's where Jim Lair, in his book Leading with Character, which is fabulous, there are 3 questions he asks the people that he works with, and he was a co-founder of the Johnson & Johnson Human Research Institute. People come from all over the place for these conferences on weekends, or with super successful athletes that he worked with as well. But he would ask them, what are you chasing? Why are you chasing it? And who are you becoming during the chase? And that kind of very intentional thinking and reflection is the only way that you can really hope to establish your values, your meaning, purpose, beyond not just an activity, but who do you want to be as a person? And I know Greg Everett, and he wrote this book Tough, and even in that book he talks about like your values and is how you live in line with those values. And are you then kind of a prescriptive person where you act with purpose and you don't just kind of react and then make a bunch of excuses for why you couldn't pull it off, but instead it's very purposeful. And I think that kind of approach to how we live, what we do, that then is you're able to take some of the pressure off. Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about like this fruitless pursuit of self-actualization. Like if that's your goal, you'll never catch it.
Yeah.
And only in the pursuit of self-transcendence, something beyond yourself, then it just happens.
Yeah.
It's like happiness. He talks about happiness the same way, which leads us right to, if we think we're going to find peace and contentment and meaning on the start of this year.
Right.
Or I'm making, got a scholarship, I'm making so much money. All of those are fine goals to have, but they can't be the reason you're doing something, and they can't be
your reason for existing.
Purpose, right, that you established, when you get up in the morning.
Right.
And there has to be something beyond that, because at some point, your playing days are over. That was something you had to deal with.
Yeah.
When you all of a sudden you're not playing anymore, you're not a player anymore.
Right.
Well, now who are you? And if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely. I can't honestly say that I didn't identify someone as, especially Gibbons when it was a program like we had. That I played. Even still, I'm like, I played volleyball at Gibbons. Because people know it, right? But I definitely feel like when that time was over, now mine got cut short earlier than I expected because of injury, which added a whole other twist to things. Because that was the injury. My junior year definitely was a situation where I was still part of the team, but it was that what else can I contribute if I'm not playing on the court? And for me, that was sort of like a coaching role of being on the sidelines, scouting for the other team, or scouting the other team for our team, coaching whoever on the sidelines. We had a lot of young players that year, so it was good to have a junior, senior on the bench to be able to have those conversations, when they came on and off the court. But when I was done playing altogether, I definitely found that I struggled with not having some sort of competition. And whether it was with myself or with a group of people or a team, I just lacked that grind and the grit and the excitement and the thrill of playing a game. I still go to a sporting event and I just get play the national anthem, I'm hyped up. It's just that is just literally, I think, in my blood. So you lose that, unless I go watch other sports, but I still am missing a component, right? I can go and watch competitive sports and get excited about it, but I lose the whole me aspect of it. And that was hard for a while. For probably 6 or 8 years, maybe longer, after I was done playing, I really struggled. I tried to find my competitiveness with myself in my workouts, in my diet, those were the 2 probably deepest ones I really dove into, because in my mind, competitiveness had to be something physical. And if I didn't have a team or an opponent, well, then it's going to be with myself. And so I set these constant fitness goals, diet goals, workout. It was just this constant chase that became very unhealthy because I wasn't getting the same type of response that I was desiring in the competitive situation of a game with this new like manufactured version of competition with myself. Like it was missing a huge component that I didn't quite realize. I don't think I had such a hard time leaving volleyball itself, but it was the competition for me that I really had a hard time figuring out. But what I finally was able to realize, and this was just in the last couple of years, so I guess it was longer ago, 15 years since I was done playing, that I don't have to, well, I don't have to have that type of competition forever. That was a temporary part of my life. Like that was my reason and my purpose for being is not to compete necessarily. I might be good at competing. I might have that mindset, but it doesn't need to be like a win or lose athletic type competition. And then further beyond that, which kind of got me out of that like unhealthy funk of working out and dieting, which was I don't have to train like I used to have to train. I don't get up and play twice a weekend. I don't practice and lift every single day. I don't have all of these various physical demands. I just need to be strong enough to pick up my kids, load up the trunk, like haul the boxes up and down the stairs, like very basic daily items that I need to be fit for. And if I want to have other goals, like that's fine. But I was able to separate that like must grind for X hours a day, must burn X number of calories, must, fit in this little diet mold or nutrition mold. And because I tried everything. I was always looking for something to latch onto that was like my new habit, my new like purpose, frankly. It was like, okay, for the next 30 days, I'm doing this. For the next 3 months, I'm doing that. But at the end, it was like, okay, now what? It was that constant now what? So shifting that mindset from like, I need to compete with myself or compete against others to, okay, I now have a purpose in my life, which is, being a wife, being a mother, being a friend, work my job, being able to give to other people, not just focus on myself. And so as soon as I let go of, it's not just about me anymore, I can't just find that role or that goal in self-competition. Like where else can I give to other people to alleviate some of that? Because I also felt like I didn't have a clear vision of what I should be doing with family or with friends or with work. And so I filled that whole void with this one thing that I knew how to do really well. But until I started identifying what was actually important to me, who is actually important to me, what my time is worth, what my physical energy is worth, that I was able to really scale that back. Now, I just love exercising. Like that is something I enjoy doing, so it's not hard for me to fit that in my day. But I'm much better now of either A, taking a day off and saying it's going to be fine, or B, shifting. I told you I'm doing different types of workouts this week. My body feels tired, so I'm going to switch it up. And that's something that feels better to me, but it wasn't until I kind of really sat down and thought, like, what is important to me? What was important to me then? What is important to me right now? And what might be important later? Because I think it's important to remember, too, that your goals and your things that you value, your core values, if you will, are going to shift over time. When it was just me, I could have some more selfish goals probably or values. Then when I got married, okay, well, there's someone else in my house I have to be thinking about and helping provide. And, quality time was important. Before, it was like, okay, I'll hang out with my friends, but I had to value that we have this relationship and then throw kids in the mix. Now I've got an even bigger purpose for raising these kids to be good adults and happy human beings and, have a good quality of life, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, but just making them good citizens of society. And that really has been the clearest purpose and goal for me.
Yeah, I think probably the quicker you can add the other people ingredient to your process, the better. I know coaching, it almost comes with the territory a little bit, although many coaches find that it's all about them and how they are perceived and where they find their worth and those outcomes. And I certainly fell into that trap to a degree. And I didn't do a good job of kind of really reflecting and making my worldview a concrete part of that. It was definitely a part of it in terms of how you treat players and what they mean to you personally. But I also definitely a lot of self-imposed pressure in terms of getting a certain kind of result that I wish I would have handled better. I was talking to someone not long ago, and she was asking about this, and I made the statement that winning volleyball games isn't as important to me anymore. And I meant to follow it up by saying I like helping other people win volleyball games now, or whatever it is. And not that there's anything wrong with wanting to win games. There isn't.
Well, and I think in coaching too, like if you are in coaching, like your job is presumably to win, to have a performing team, right?
Yep.
But I know you've mentioned countless coaches that you've studied. Russ Rose being one we've most recently talked about. But when you are invested in your people, like your army, if you will, like who they are, who Katie mentioned he brought in a certain type of person who he knew would fit the culture and the environment and his type of leadership there. But again, he recognized who those people, who they were, how they respond to things, and knew that it would fit well. But I think it's inherently in coaching, yes, the goal is theoretically to win, right? But it takes a conscious effort to say, I know that if I focus on my people and I invest in them and I help serve them, they will then be able to perform better just by having the service for others, not because I had, 5 girls that were 6'6", and that was great, and that's how we won games. Like if you invest in them as people, they can perform well, and that will come, as we always say, comes as a byproduct of that focusing and serving others. So as a coach, you have to really be conscious to think about, yes, my job is to win, but how am I going to invest in these players who are ultimately the ones on the court doing the job to get that outcome?
Well, I think that too, you have to be, whatever it is, like we'll just stick with coaching, you have to be doing it for something besides just winning the game. And so that all has worth and meaning when you can use this to teach things. You can yourself become a better person. You can help them become better people, so that when the playing career is over, they've learned all these things that they can apply to how they live. And the same applies for me. And if I look back and all I have is won this many games or whatever, well, that's not enough.
Right.
That's a really
definitely not
short-sighted view of our existence. And
what did you take away from it that's going to make you, be a better human in the future? What character, what is your character after that experience? What are your, just those characteristics that make you a good teammate, or the time management? I think there are so many other skills that you can take on that will translate into life, unlike my vertical was this, or I had this many kills, or I scored this many points, which is not something that beyond your sport gets you anywhere. But those character traits that you learn in your life through being on a team or through coaching and having relationships are the things that you can then, it takes a bit of a shift to think how to transition from the sports environment to whatever environment comes next. But there are character traits that you can take with you, unlike I was the best player on the team or I scored the most points.
Well, and that's, we talk about process, growth mindset, all these things. Like if you got the sense, or if we each got the sense that the only thing that mattered when you were in high school was winning, we would not be sitting here.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be meaningful, really, to either one of us.
We would just high-fived at the end and been like, all right, good job, good work, moving on.
And so that's where all of this, you don't want to feel empty at the end when you look back and that was it.
Yeah.
And so when you're in it, it's easy to mistake this for a soft approach. But no, the pursuit of excellence is real. It's hard. And that's what makes it great. Yeah. But
pursuit of excellence can be very difficult too, especially in a team sports setting. And the example of, a high-performing college team is not, they might be going to parties, but they're holding each other accountable to not stay out too late, not drink, not, that in itself, I think, requires some grit and some commitment to your teammate too. It's not just on the court. So I think that sort of soft idea of it's bigger than this, but it also, that pursuit of excellence is not just excellence on the court, but all of the other things in your life that have to be geared towards that one common goal. And accountability can be hard. It's hard sometimes to call out a teammate or to hold yourself accountable even. So I think I think it can be viewed as a soft way to think about it, but at the same rate that.
Well, I just think that's
a challenge.
That's a mistake
for
to
sure.
do that. And even if you talk to the hardest coaches or whatever, they're not doing it because they're jerks. They're doing it because they know this is important. You learning how to deal with hard
Yeah.
matters, and who you are when you come out the other end is important. It matters. And, I think, if Katie would talk about Russ Rose, that's what she appreciates
Yeah.
about that whole process. So I think it's a huge error to view it as being soft, because we're not just harping on outcomes. Because I don't think that produces your best performance.
Definitely not.
I think if you're distracted by what happens if I miss this, I fail,
that's the biggest one.
then you're not going to perform well. And it's impossible not to be distracted by those things if your entire sense of worth and identity is piled on top of this activity, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then your performance must be unequivocal, or you're a failure.
Or else.
And then what? Then who are you?
Yeah.
And I think that's just it's an approach we learn from when we're young. If I know Brett Ledbetter and What Drives Winning, he talks about this like crazy. The first thing you learn, like if you're a basketball player, you're asked, how many points did you score and did you win?
Yeah.
And we learn,
You're ingrained in that.
I mean, you'd be 4 years old and
Yeah.
like how many points I scored matters.
Yeah.
Winning and losing matters. And if that becomes your whole focus, then one,
It's
you're
a lot- empty
missing,
existence.
and you're missing all these steps along the way that help you become as good as you can be. And instead, all of this is riding on the outcome of this
Yeah.
game. Well, then what about the next game? And if there's always going to be more games,
Right.
or more presentations to give, or whatever it is. Instead, we want to be immersed in being excellent right now. And I remember reading Nick Saban discussing their whole approach at Alabama. He said, we don't talk about winning national championships. We talk about being excellent in this repetition, in this drill,
Every
in this
single thing they
practice.
do.
And then when that rep's over, we're on to the next
Excellent,
rep.
the
Or
next one.
be excellent. And then we stack excellent drills. You have an excellent practice. You stack excellent practices. Then when it comes time to play, you're ready.
It's on repeat. Well, that was like the example Katie gave. Was like it didn't matter who was on the other side of the net. They knew.
Right.
They just they executed their role, and that was 3-0, 3 and out, 3 and 3 out, and that was like a piece of cake for them. And that didn't just come from because they had good players, or because that came from that practice and that constant pursuit of excellence in everything they do every single day, and the confidence that we know how to get out of these situations, or we know how to work together as a team to perform regardless of what's happening outside of those other distractions.
And those teams were, I would say, very fortunate in terms of their talent level.
Absolutely.
But at some point,
This is not to say you can throw a bunch of scrubs on the court and
Sure.
expect that if they pursue excellence all the time, they'll win.
but at some point, you can't rely on your talent alone. And they may have played plenty of matches against less talented teams, but ultimately, like what they're remembered for are those moments where it's like game on, the team on the other side of the net is just as good.
Yeah, also
And
game on, yeah.
then what?
Right.
And that's where you have to have developed more than that. And you have to rely on more than just a skill set. And if you spend much time thinking about, oh my gosh, what happens if we lose? Well, you're losing.
Yeah.
And that's pretty unsatisfying.
I think that you talking about kids, at a young age, hearing how many goals did you score? Did you win? This is probably a good transition into, it's hard for a 12, 13, 17-year-old kid, even a 23-year-old kid, to say, I know what my purpose in life is. That's challenging for them. It's just hard to wrap their minds around. Like, what's the rest of my life? And it is very easy to get wrapped up at that age in your identity and popularity at school. What kind of clothes you wear and like how good you are at your sport. Like, those are kind of some of those things that age focuses on. But what are some ways that, as I mentioned, like it's fluid. You're constantly gonna have reasons in life or life events that will change what you feel your purpose, your identity is, and what those core values are. But what are some ways that a young person who is listening to this and wanting
Right.
to say, I don't want to wait till I'm 20 something to think about this. Let's fix this now. But it seems very complex. Like, what's the starting point for that?
I think without question, the foundation of this is what kind of person you want to be, why are you doing this, and who do you want to become. And Eric Potterat, he is a clinical psychologist. He wrote the book Learned Excellence, and he was helped develop like the mental toughness, like training assessment for a BUDS program for Navy SEALs, and worked with the Dodgers, worked with Miami Heat. And that's what he starts with every time, establishing who you are, who do you want to become, and why are you doing this in the first place. And so you can be 15 years old and do that.
Yeah.
But that just means you have to take some time and think about it and write it down. We'll talk probably more in depth about that kind of journaling. If you don't write it down, if you don't spend any time thinking about it, well, then it's not happening.
Right.
And then you're just going to be in a reactive state.
Fluff and fish.
And yeah, it's not going to work. And then it's going to be all about what other people think and how other people you think are perceiving you. And that's in Michael Gervais' book, First Rule of Mastery, and it's dealing with the fear of other people's opinions. And the faster that can be removed from the equation,
Yeah.
the better. And that might mean if you're playing at a big club tournament, you're not worried about which college coaches are standing over there.
Yep.
You're just playing, and you're not concerned with how they perceive you. All of those kind of distracting thoughts are almost all centered around what other people think of us.
Yeah.
And you've got to
Rein that in.
come to terms with that and realize like there is no way that I can do well and live well if I'm just constantly concerned with how I'm going to be perceived by other people. And that's it can be kind of a heavy
Yeah.
thing, but I don't know. I think it's simple, but not easy.
Well, I think in this sort of, and we talked about this in the youth sports episode, but in this sort of world where kids are starting, quote, elite sports or travel teams at 7, I think it's also important for parents to have a good handle on what this means for their kid, because when this whole, pay to play thing is happening and parents have a whole bunch of money on the line and or are in debt over, trying to get their kid to play. If that's something that you're putting pressure or responsibility on your kid over, like you bet, like even joking, even like, oh God, we hope we get a scholarship because we're putting so much in, like even those little kind of comments that your kid might hear in conversation with other parents, or like or direct pressures of, hey, you better work, you didn't work hard today, I'm paying good money for this, so you better. Mm-hmm. I think it's even more important, or just equally as important for parents to understand that the more that type of conversation and that type of pressure gets put on the kid, the harder it is. It's hard enough at these young ages to shut out what other people think of you and to not want to impress or show off or, get credit from other people. But when you're parents, which is a whole other relationship that's not just other people, it is family, it is a different relationship, it's really, really crucial that parents are cognizant of things that they're saying, pressures they're putting on their kids, expectations that they're having.
Well, and those are
makes it impossible for the kid to ever get to what we're even talking about.
Right. There's such intense relationships that you have to be emphasizing the right things as parents, and it's the kind of person they are, kind of person they're becoming, their values and effort and being a good teammate and things like that. Not the test grade, not whether you played the entire solo without missing a note, or whether you struck out or not. That can't be it.
No.
And it's very easy to have that become part of your parental identity. That's
another degree of that, their outside expectations or outside perceptions of doing things for others, and that trickles down. So if the parents are wanting their kid to perform so that the parent looks good, well, that's doubling down on the pressure that you're putting on the kid, because they already have their own insecurities of what do people think, what's it going to look like if I do this or if I don't do that. And then when the parents are also think that their reputation or their whatever is on the line, it just trickles down. I think that makes it really impossible for kids to get, the whole other conversation we've had and could have 1,000 more times about getting into that type of level of sports at those young ages is a whole other conversation. But if that's something that you're doing, it's so important for parents to understand how their actions and their words and how they view their role in all of this for their kid can really, really impact for better or for worse, depending on how you act for your kid.
And it all keeps coming back to the same thing. Like, what do we value?
Yeah.
And what is our
The parents
purpose?
can do the exercise too. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
For
The Layers Leading with Character comes with a journal where there's 150 days of reflection. It's only 10 minutes a day, but they're hard questions. I've done it, and it is not easy at all. It tests you,
Yeah.
and makes you really evaluate who you are and what kind of person you are and who are you going to become. And when it comes to like a young person, performance-wise, and it doesn't matter whether you're an athlete or a student or a musician or an actor or whatever, like all of it goes back to why are you doing this? And I know Gervais he has the line like, you want to use your performance to express who you are, not for it to determine who you are. I thought that was a great line. And Lair told the story of Dan Jansen, the very famous speed skater, some years ago. But when he was able to repurpose his skating to express himself, to show how grateful he was for the opportunity to have done all this, to express joy in skating, that's when he would produce his best performance. And Jansen has the quote, if you can use your sport to become a better person, then you've won. And I think who you're becoming along the journey is what matters most. And if every day you wake up and you are pursuing excellence in every aspect of your life, that includes that activity, whatever it is, but it also includes how you treat others. Am I more empathetic? Am I more compassionate? Am I friendlier?
I mean, that's that sort of byproduct concept, or it just happens naturally. Is it's I always find that when I decide I'm going to do something for others, whether it comes back and call it karma or whatever, or you just feel good because you did something, that does it. It boosts your day. It's if you make eye contact with people, if you go to the grocery store, don't have your AirPods in, it's like just having those little intentional ways of being throughout your day lift you up, lift others up, and make you feel purposeful in the world where there's just people walking right and left all over, to feel like you're not just going through your day, checking a list and getting your things done without having some sort of like the idea of people driving home from work and realizing they drove home and forgot the whole, they didn't really think about the drive because you're on autopilot, because you're checking your phone, you're listening to music, you're like being attentive, paying attention, being aware, being mindful can be things that will fulfill you, fulfill others, and be part of that pursuit of excellence.
Yeah, and it's not, the purpose isn't like being mindful in the sense of pondering the lint in your belly button.
Right.
Like it's
gross.
It's a cliche. I didn't invent it. But there's this quote. It's from Erwin Raphael McManus's book, Mind Shift. He says, oops, I just lost it. Your life purpose must be bigger than simply becoming famous, rich, or powerful. If these are the fuel of your life, you will always be running on empty. You will achieve everything you've ever wanted and still feel as if you have nothing. You must live for more. There is no level of success that will give meaning to your life. If you do not already have meaning in your life, all that you achieve will have no meaning. And that's what you have to understand about whatever it is you're doing. And I know Brett Ledbetter, who talked about one example, was a young woman who was a soccer player, and she was All-American, national team, led the nation scoring kind of player, and not fulfilled and not satisfied. And he asked her if 12-year-old you had been told when 10 years later you're going to be on the national team, you'll have been a multiple All-American, you'll have led the nation in scoring, would you be happy? And that 12-year-old you would say yes. So he literally said, write a letter to 12-year-old you and explain what's happened.
Yeah.
And that there's no question that the pursuit of excellence, and you have these moments of triumph, they matter.
Yeah.
But it's not the only thing that matters. And it can't be the foundation upon which your entire life is built.
Right.
And that's where the whole notion of self-transcendence that Viktor Frankl talks about, nobody becomes great just by being utterly self-absorbed. And it's about the lives we impact along the way. And that's, I don't know, it's when I think now, like what provides meaning and purpose to my existence, it is whatever. I'm older and I've really worked a lot at kind of refining my worldview, and it's very heavy and meaningful to me that I can help other people live well and find success in not just that activity, but beyond that. It's very meaningful, like, to me, very. But that's, if you're playing your sport for the people around you, you're going to play better. If you're working in a way that I'm going to make the lives of the people around me a little bit better today, you're going to be a great employee.
Yeah, parenting. I mean, that's one that I think is sort of somewhat inherent, but I also think in this world of, and this could be a whole tangent, we can end it here, but, you know, in the world of social media where people are constantly posting things that they're doing with their kids and places they're going and things they're buying, like, it's very easy to think that people are, you know, parenting their kids in a way for other people. But if you just focus on giving your kids, there's all these quotes that your kids are never going to remember, you know, how much your car was and how big your house was and how new your cabinets were, and they want to know if they have a happy home to come home to where they're cozy and they have parents who love them and hug them and read them books and do those sort of more family, intimate type things that, you know, we assume that parenting is inherently giving and doing for others, but it's important in today's world that you really focus on paying attention to what your child needs, no matter what anybody else thinks or sees. And that's going to make them good people. Yeah.
I mean, I think that should be the goal, whoever we're with, whatever
100%.
we're doing ultimately. And those are things that you have to work out for yourself. Yeah. And whether you're 13 years old or 23 or 33 or older than that, you reflecting upon and establishing your own personal code and values, that's how you find your way. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unbound Performance Podcast.
Your support helps us continue to build our community. If you're enjoying this content, please like, subscribe, and share.